It's a hard day's late night with Ira. Every night it's feeling alright. It's a hard day's late night with Ira. Why not come over tonight? We talk about everything under the moon. Your favorite cartoon or song you love. You never really know just how it might go. Why don't we get things started? It's a hard day's late night with Ira. It's a hard day's late night with Ira. It's a hard day's late night with Ira. A hard day's late night with Ira.
This week's episode of A Hard Day's Late Night with Ira, brought to you by Sarasota's friendliest garden supply. Thank you very much. You'll find them just right of the cigar barn, left of the Mennonite roller derby rink out there on Bahia Vista. Thank you very much. Great sponsors. Let's get on with the show. If I talk too much about Dennis Diken, I'll probably end up saying some really embarrassing stuff about how much he means to me. Suffice to say that the few short years I spent on the road working side by side with Dennis were arguably the most important training I could have ever gotten to prepare me for what was about to happen with Not a Surf. So I am ever grateful for my apprenticeship. Okay, so here we go. Dennis Diken, drummer of the Smithereens. I'm proud to call you my friend. We've been friends for a long time, and I'm doing this interview because this little episode of the podcast is about my history with the Smithereens, which was a central thing in my development as a musician, because I had gone for a long time in various bands and was successful, unsuccessful. I had some success with the Fuzz Tones, for example, and there was some fallow years. And then I was kind of neither here nor there. And I was offered a job, and I will get into the whole story, but I was offered a gig as a roadie for the Smithereens, and that turned into us for about 2 odd years of my life. Odd, they weren't that odd, but about 2 years of my life. That's what I did, and I had never really. I had roadied for like the Flesh Tones for a couple of gigs here and there, which was fun. But I'd never done this sort of extensive, like going on the road in a tour bus with a band. This was an eye-opening experience for me, and it changed my whole trajectory and my whole idea about what I wanted to do, and it was really central. So that's why I'm so happy to talk to you about this period, which was really incredibly powerful for me, and still resonates through my life in very significant ways. So let's.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear. I really mean that.
It's true. I say this pretty much every time we meet it because it never stops being true. So let's start from the top. I want to just talk a little bit about the history of the Smithereens before we get into my tenure. The Smithereens go way, way back. It's not unlike the Not a Surf story where a couple of guys in the band were like in grade school together. Now you guys go way, way back. Just give me a sort of a brief overview of the deep history of the Smithereens. I know you guys all lived in the same town was it Scotch Plains?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, actually, the town was, Pat Denizio was from Scotch Plains. Jimmy, Mike, and myself are from Carteret, New Jersey. Which was about, Carteret.
Yes, lovely town.
I guess Scotch Plains was probably about a half hour away from Carteret. Anyway, my hometown is Garfield, New Jersey. I moved from there when I was 5, and in second grade I moved schools from St. Elias School. The family moved from one street to another, so I got the chance to. Actually, my parents offered me the option: you can continue going to Catholic school, or you can go to Lincoln School, which is right around the corner, a public school. And I lunged for the public school.
Well, did you not like Catholic school specifically? Not your thing.
It just seemed, and it was a kind of a small student body. I thought I'd make more friends if I went to this public school. Yeah. And it turned out to be so true. I lucked into somehow a graduating year, whatever you want to call it, a class that was filled with kids who were bright, had senses of humor, curious, and we all fed off of each other's mojo. It was a great group of kids to grow up with and go through school with. And one of those kids was Mike Mazzaris. I guess I started there in second grade. I started knowing Mike around third, fourth grade, 1966, we're talking.
Wow.
And we were good buddies, and Mike at that time was not playing bass.
Right.
And at that time I had not received my first drum kit. However, I was teaching myself to play drums on coffee cans with plastic lids.
Yes,
and,
yes.
Mike at the time was playing accordion, but we didn't. He was taking lessons, but we didn't start playing. We didn't play music together, but we both shared an
interest.
Well, we shared a real peculiar view of the world and and sense of humor, and a lot of it centered around the kind of insanity that you see on the Abbott and Costello television show, not the movies, but I know you and I have talked about this a lot.
And we're going to talk about it more because I think this is really central too. This is a great.
Yeah, our worldview and our sense of humor and the way we went about even dealing with our teachers and our sense of humor was a great bond between us.
Right.
So Mike and I went through grammar school together, and he actually knew Jimmy Babjack during that time, but I didn't. See, Jimmy went to a different school, grammar school, but Mike and Jimmy attended the same Hungarian church.
I love it.
So they knew each other from there. So when I entered high school, that's where I met Jimmy. And that's a story that's worth telling. If I don't know if you want to lead up to that or not.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'd love to. I can decide later, like what stays and goes. Please tell the story.
When we graduated 8th grade at Lincoln School in Carteret, I had gotten my first drum kit. I graduated in 71. I had my first drum kit in 1968.
68.
Yeah.
And you were about, and I'm sorry, how old were you then?
I was 10 in 1960.
That's
I was 11.
Yeah, that's when I got my first drum set as well. At that age.
Yeah. My first drum kit was a half Ludwig, half WFL red sparkle kit.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure you remember what it was like when you got your first drum kit. You come home from school and you put on the Gary Lewis and Beatles and Motown records and you just go for it. And that's how I learned.
Right.
After playing on coffee cans with plastic lids.
Right.
But, I wanted to form a band. I knew one guitarist, but we weren't able to make a go of anything. So the summer between 8th grade and high school, I joined my first band when our newspaper delivery boy knocked on the cellar door. He heard me play. He says, "Hey, you play drums? You want to join a band?" I said, "Okay." No, I did that summer. It was all covers.
Yeah.
And wasn't a very good band, but I had some fun and got to know what it was like to play in a band, And
right.
Then I think as soon as things just didn't work out, so I quit that. And then when I graduated 8th grade and was looking forward to going to high school, in my mind I thought, wow, this is great, because I haven't been able to meet anybody, any musicians that I felt like I would want to form a band with. But if I could meet, there'd be a bigger student body, a lot more kids. So if I could meet a guitarist who could play I Can't Explain, then I knew that I found someone I could start a band with. So first day of freshman year in high school, day 1, period 1, row 1, seat 1.
Get out of here.
There's a kid sitting with he's got kind of a Beatles-ish haircut, more so than the other guys. And I said, this kid looks like he might be hip. And so I got in my mind, my big desire, find a kid who can play Can't Explain. He opens his loose leaf, and plastered inside his notebook are color photos of The Who from Hit Parader magazine. And
you have really good luck, Dennis Diken. You have
I said, wow, first day, first period.
It's a good
I
sign.
was sitting in the second row. So that day, I introduced myself after that class, and turns out he played guitar, and we started playing together that week.
Wow.
And we labored for years, just the two of us playing in his garage and honing our skills, but not really finding too many sympathetic musicians that were into what we were digging. Keep in mind, this is 71, and between 71 and 75, when we graduated, there was a lot of, there was Elton John, there was Southern rock.
Sure. Singer-songwriter stuff in the early 70s is all James Taylor.
Right, and that's not that I disliked that, but I didn't want to play that in a band. So we did. We tried out a few different lead singers here and there, but nothing, just nothing. And then we were in Jimmy's garage in the summer of '74 playing cuts from Tommy and Kinks and Small Faces, and anyway, so we graduate high school. And Mike decides he's going to learn to play bass. We were all friends, we were in high school together, the three of us. And so he did. And he got really good really quickly.
Interesting. He had a music, he knew about music. Obviously, he'd been playing an instrument, so he knew how music worked.
I think that totally informed his skill set. But, so we had the nucleus of a band, but we still didn't have a lead singer. We started playing in Jimmy's laundry room in garage. We started practicing a lot, the three of us. And we did have one fellow who sang with us for a little while. We did a private party at Mike's apartment in Perth Amboy.
Nice.
And we played in the park one time. But that also just didn't work out. So,
and I'm sorry, you guys were playing covers? You were playing covers or originals at this point?
Covers, and maybe, I forget if Jimmy had written White Castle Blues at that time.
Sure.
We might have been playing White Castle Blues, and maybe fooling around with a few original ideas, but for the most part it was covers. Right. And so, we just weren't able to find a lead singer. So even though we didn't, and Mike went to Maine to go to college, so we didn't split up, but we still kept trying to find somebody to sing with us. In the meantime, I'm looking to play, so I joined a bunch of different other bands here and there and did gigs. And lo and behold, 1978, as was my wont, I would look at the musicians' classifieds every week in the Village Voice, and I went on auditions, and I met up with a lot of different singer-songwriters and other bands. And actually, one thing come from that. I met with this cover band that was doing a few originals, and that was actually a good little band in 1978. And we did they were getting a lot of gigs. We were actually making money, and to have a semblance of a job, I had my own T-shirt silk screening shop at the time.
Nice.
Which basically was my excuse. If I wanted to screw off and go play music, I could just close up shop, So
right.
It didn't, as opposed to punching a clock somewhere. So it didn't fork too much lightning.
But that's creative. Anyway, that's a nice creative job.
Yeah, it is. But that's a whole other discussion. I will say this: I did come up with a line of like British rock T-shirts. Jimmy was with me in there for a while. And we used to sell those T-shirts through ads in Trouser Press magazine.
Nice.
And we actually did the Trouser Press logo T-shirts. But that's, like I said, a whole other story.
Right.
Anyway, so I was reading, I guess it was in the New Jersey publication called The Aquarian, which is still going.
Right. They
had a very thriving musicians classified. And I met a guy who had a cover band, I think I said that, and we started playing around, and through him, met this other guy, Mark Mazer, and he had an original band that was looking for a rhythm section. So it was through this other fellow, Bob Levinson, from that other band, that Mike and I joined with Mark, and we started, and another keyboard player called David Cogswell. We started playing around New York. It was really an eye-opener for us. It was our first time playing in New York clubs, and our home base was Kenny's Castaways.
Right.
And from there we played Max's Kansas City. We played Great Gildersleeve.
Yes.
We played a club called Snafu. A lot of different...
I recall all those clubs.
You remember Snafu?
I remember Snafu being on the corner of 21st Street and 6th Avenue. Is that the one?
Sounds right. Yeah.
I remember seeing a couple of bands there. There's a little tiny corner on a corner of. I remember. Yeah. I remember being 20, specifically 21st, because I saw a band that I eventually joined called the Deans of Discipline in that little room, who were great.
Okay.
So yeah, I remember it pretty clearly. And the Great Gildersleeves was one of the first places when I started joining a band with some local guys in Queens. That was one of the first, if not the first gig we got in New York City for ourselves, which was like a really, really big deal.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a great experience for Mike and I to, jump into a different phase of performing at that level, at that early band level. So that was really cool. And then that band was kind of teetering. Oh, I think because Mark Mazer went to play with Kid Creole and the Coconuts.
Oh, that's a good job.
Yeah, so we were kind of hung out there for a while. So I kept looking at the ads and seeing if we could find a lead. We put an ad out, too, looking for a lead singer. And that's how we met Pat Denizio.
He answered an ad, really? That's from an ad?
That's right.
Wow.
Pat had an ad in the Aquarium. He was looking for... he had a cover band at the time called The Like. And they were looking for a drummer. So I answered this ad, and I remember I spoke with Pat, and he was in Scotch Plains, and it sounded interesting. They were doing Elvis Costello, they were doing Beatles, Buddy Holly, The Jam.
Nice.
So it was kind of up my alley. It sounded like a fun thing. And when I met Pat and at least one other guy in the band, we really clicked culturally and senses of humor, and our musical tastes were on the same page. So I played in that band, really just rehearsed, I think, for 6 months, and we did one gig. And it actually turned into a nice little band from all that rehearsing, but it was... I quit the band before that gig, but I agreed to do that one gig. Lo and behold, Pat was writing songs.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, had he started writing songs at that point? Obviously, he had.
I think he might have started to at that time, but we hadn't performed any of them. But Pat and I, we stayed friends. We stayed in touch. And when he was getting ready to demo some of his songs, he called me to play on them. So I went with him to a studio in Long Branch, New Jersey. I think it was called Odyssey. I think it's long gone. 24 tracks, and he and I cut, I think, 3 songs. I was on drums, and Pat did guitars, basses, and vocals. I think I did sing harmony on some of those. Anyway, so meanwhile, Mike and I are still playing with the Targets, and Pat had another bass player who, well, actually, he didn't have another guitarist, and Pat was doing the solos. And I said, you know what? I have a guy who would be really good for these songs, who I think would do some really good solos.
That's what Paul McCartney said to John Lennon.
Ah, there you go.
I know, just the guy.
Yeah, and so I brought Jimmy in, and then the bass player Pat was working with really didn't. He wasn't he didn't have the same sensibilities, or the sensibilities that you would need to play the pop songs that Pat was writing. So, all along, Jimmy and I were, we were hoping to bring Mike in, and so we did, and that's really how it came about.
Wow, that's a great
that
story.
I played with the Like, I guess that was 79, and it was 1980 when I started recording with Pat, and Jimmy and Mike eventually joined,
Speaking with Jim a couple of weeks ago, he pointed out he really underlined your contribution, your significance certainly in his, and probably some degree Mike's musical education, because you were the kind of person who, I'm sure all of you liked a lot of stuff, but according to Jim, like, he learned a lot from your musicality. Like, you brought a lot to the table, and you were constantly a source of knowledge for him. He really credits you with a lot.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah,
because I know you're a kind of guy. You're I don't know if the story is true, apocryphal, or I don't know who told me. Maybe Severo told me the story that that you would go on tour with like a suitcase full of just record sleeves to read them. Is that true?
No.
I like that story though. I like you showing up with a suitcase full of sleeves to study them, like you're studying, like you're doing your homework. But that's not true.
No, unless I was working on a project where I was doing research. But no,
possibly.
But what I was going to say is, Jimmy and Mike were big record fans and music fans, but I think I took it to maybe a ridiculous level. I really consumed records and would go on excursions to flea markets and garage sales and go to New York City to well, Jimmy, of course, joined me on a lot of that too. But I got the bug very early when I was really young. I guess when I was 4 or 5 years old, and that's when I started, remembering who the artists were, what the labels were, what the top 40 was. I was really into music at a very young age. I attribute that, I think, in large part to watching American Bandstand.
Really?
Yeah, well, because it was on every day before I was even going to school, and you had the Twist going on with Chubby Checker and a lot of great records you would just hear every day.
Right.
And and at that young age, I did gravitate towards the rhythm, and that's when I started teaching. Actually, even younger. You know what? I got my first toy drum when I was about 2 going on 3 for Christmas of 1959.
Yeah.
And so, for whatever reason, I really devoured records and music. And, I guess I just went so much further. And it was a great joy to be able to share that passion with the other guys. And, I still listen for new and old sounds all the time. I'm amazed how much great new music there is out there that a lot of people are just not exposed to, or there's just so much of it that the channels to access them are so scattered.
Right. Yeah, I feel. I think this is very symptomatic of people. Is that as you get older, most people, I think it's harder for them to connect with new music. They start. I have to include myself. Like I still go back to. Like this, I spent a lot of time in the 70s. Musically speaking, I still am I feel like I'm still exploring the 70s. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff I didn't hear at the time. But this is true of every decade, obviously.
It's really true. There's just for every hit record that was made, there was 100 ones that didn't make it,
right? And should have been, but maybe should have been hits, but didn't.
Promotion or whatever it might have been. There's always. I don't get it when people say they're bored. There's always so much music to discover.
Right. And you got,
a big source of my learning is from listening to the station WFMU. It's freeform radio, and every week on certain shows, I'm just bowled over at how much new music, bands I never even heard of the previous week, and then they come out with a new record. So it's. It's pretty wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I want to talk about your show a little bit later too on FMU because you have a great show, and I've heard it. It's fantastic. The other thing I just wanted to go back for a second before we get into the '90s. I also remember you guys were big Kinks fans. I wanted to bring up the Kinks for a second because I think it was Jimmy who said there was some sort of moment where guys had gone to see like the Kinks or something, maybe at the Garden or something like that. And he said that he had a kind of come to Jesus moment where it sort of dawned on him because he thought he was just going to be like a Hungarian bartender all his life. That was his lot in life. That's what he was going to be doing. That's, it was the family operation. And at some point, he was watching, I'm guessing it was the Kinks, and he a light bulb went off and he's like, wow, we could do this.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him saying that. I think this is really again, I equate it back to I know that I remember when I was working for you guys, there was always this love of the Kinks were really, really, the Kinks were probably discussed more than any band. Generally speaking, you guys were huge. The Beatles are obvious. The Kinks are not so obvious, and that's why they're so interesting. They're kind of a boutique item. For a lot of music, for people who know me, even like me, I know a lot of Kinks music, but there's always a Kinks song that I've never heard. It always happens. Wow, there's another one I've never heard before because they have such a deep, incredible catalog full of amazing stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, I think the Kinks were a big moment for all of us, seeing them live. But I also remember Jimmy talking about going to CBGB's and seeing bands playing there, and I think that also sparked his...
Maybe that's what it was, a smaller kind of, not a big room, but a small room, where he's like, oh, we could do that easily.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the story. Maybe Jimmy told you, but it was summer of '76, and he and I and some friends went to see Paul McCartney, the Wings Over America tour at the Garden, right?
Right.
And so we were very excited about that, of course.
Sure.
And the friends that we were with say, hey, you know what? After the show, we're going to go down to the Bowery and go to this place, CBGB, which I had been reading about and hearing about and been very eager to explore. So I said, yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
right. And so we leave Madison Square Garden, we take a subway down to the Bowery, and we go walk into CBGB, and Television are on stage.
Oh, my God.
And I think that might have been the moment that Jimmy was talking about, I think.
Yeah, possibly. I don't remember if he said Television. I think, yeah. But yeah, that sounds like something that would kind of like would be pretty earth-shattering.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been several incidents, maybe seeing the Kinks. I think the show Jimmy's talking about is the Kinks at the Felt Forum, which was adjacent to the Garden in the same footprint in '74. But yeah, I think going to see a band in a club like that
made it more like, oh, we can't fill a Garden, but we could do this.
Right. I think we all probably felt that way. But yeah, I remember Jimmy talking about. I think it was going to CB's. Yeah.
No, that's a great story. Okay, so now and then we're going to skip over. We're going to skip over the greatest part. The 80s, you guys had a string of fantastic, huge, incredible radio singles, one after another. And I remember the first time I heard you guys. I mean, I'm guessing I'd heard maybe Blood and Roses on MTV or something like that. But I have a very specific memory of driving in my mom's car on Woodhaven Boulevard in Queens, and I was listening to what it might have been NEW or it might have been LIR. And I wasn't LIR. It was a New York local station. Let's guess it was let's say NEW, and they played "Strangers When We Meet," and I practically crashed the car. I was like, this. I went through me like an hour. I can still remember. I can go back in time, and I'm sitting in my mom's car, and I turned it up on the radio. I'm like, this is the greatest song I've ever heard. It has every element of every. It's like the first time you hear like "Go All the Way" by the Raspberries or something like that. It's got all these. It's got the Who in there, and the Beatles are in there, and the Stones are in there. There's all this stuff going on, and the background harmonies, and you put the big Hal Blaine triplet ending on the end of it, and I was like, this is like the greatest thing ever. Like the sun came out. It was amazing. And so I remember that really, really clearly. And then sometime, again, this might have been, let's say I don't know when that would have been. What year would that have been? 1980 something? I beg your pardon? What year? Yeah, what year would that?
Well, it came out in 86.
86. Well, let's say I heard that around 86, 87, somewhere in there. And then, so now a couple of years go by. I was playing in some bands in New York, and like playing in a band can be, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. You're trying to succeed, and you're batting your head against the wall and trying to impress everyone with how great you are, and that works not even half the time. But so by the time the early 90s rolled around, I had been in and out of bands, and I was kind of blown out. I was in my late 20s, I guess, and I was already tired. Like, this musician thing, I don't know. Like, I'm coming into my 30s. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. But I still loved playing the drums so much. I wasn't ready to give it up just yet. But there was a little downtime, and my friend Kevin. Now, Kevin, I want to step back because Kevin, I had a history with Kevin going back to about 1983 or 4 when I joined this band, the Fuzz Tones, a garage rock band. Kevin, who is commonly known in Smithereen circles as Chopper, was their roadie, and over the years we became very close friends. He lived in the same neighborhood as me, basically in Queens, and so we would drive together to gigs, and after the show we'd go back to we go to White Castle after shows together, like you do, like a bonding, and of course and so over the years we remained friends, and then around 1980, I think it was 1983. I was freshly out of a couple of bands, and I was just kind of wandering about. And he called me, and he said, would you be interested in like being a drum tech for the Smithereens for a show? I'm like, yeah, I jumped at it. And I did it, and then that sort of morphed over the next 2 years into a sort of more steady job. You guys were working, in 84 and 85, you guys were, in 84 you were kind of touring, making a record, and then in 85 there was a lot of touring, and that's, I left around that point to join Not a Surf. But, so 1980...
No, you're talking about 94.
Oh, 90, I always got 80 when I say 90. That's the problem, getting old. I always confuse the 80s. What decade is it? So 1993, he called me and said, would you be interested in teching for the Smithereens? And I jumped at it. And so now here we are. So 1983. So I'd like to sort of travel back in time for a second. And now, could you remember your relationship with Kevin? Kevin, like I said, Kevin Wormachek was he was an interesting guy because he was a roadie to you and me, but he was also an art. He had studied art. He was an art history major. He was a very interesting character. So do you remember, when did Kevin start working for you guys? Do you recall?
I remember the moment I met Kevin. And again, not to keep correcting you, but you kind of lapsed back and saying to 84, 83, it's 94.
Yes, I'm sorry.
But I will go back to the 80s now, because we were on our first tour after, especially for you, after, let me rephrase that. We were, I remember the first time I met Kevin Wormachek, aka Chopper. It was on our first tour, 1986. After Especially for You, it was the tour to promote Especially for You.
Yeah.
And so, we were really just thrown out there into the world. It was pretty exciting.
Right.
We were, I think we were heading to Milwaukee from Chicago, and somebody on our crew bailed. I don't quite remember what happened, but we needed to get somebody on board, but quick. And somebody on our crew or management knew Kevin, called him, he was available. So he flew into Chicago. I don't remember which airport. And I recall we picked him up as we were leaving Chicago. And he came with us to Milwaukee and started at that time. It was probably late summer or thereabouts of 86.
86, right.
Yeah.
That was about a year after I last time I had really worked with him was the end of 85. I left the Fuzztones in 85, so it was about a year after.
Okay.
Yeah, after that, because the Fuzztones kind of, I don't know if he continued to work for the Fuzztones after that period. It was I don't recall that. Well, okay, so but he worked for a lot of bands. I know he worked for the Cramps. He worked for, he did a lot of really interesting stuff. I mean, he took any job that he could get because, well, that's the kind of guy he was. But I think he always liked the experience of all kinds. Like I know he worked for King Diamond, this very intense heavy metal band, and so I think he just loved. He loved the stories that he would get out of it. I think he just loved the whole experience of being on the road, and it gave him a chance to. He was the kind of guy who would love to go to art museums. He would always get up early. We'd sleep late, and he would get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, go to a local art museum wherever we were, and sketch all day.
He was a real talented artist.
Super
I still
talented.
have some of the things he gave me that he drew. That's he was quite a character, and he really. He was one of those guys that would just speak his mind,
Yeah, no, he was very boldly forthright. Because I think he saw himself as an artist, too. I don't think he saw himself as lesser than any of us. He always saw himself as an equal, even to you guys, who you were his bosses, in effect. I think he was happy to I think he was really tight with Pat, too, and I think that, I don't know, maybe that gave him, he felt like he could just, no, he had a strong opinion, and he was happy to voice it. But, it was never anything bad. I mean, you could always,
Well, I remember that first night in Milwaukee, I asked him if he could help me with something. He just totally gave me shit. He just came on board. We just hired him, and he was giving me attitude. It was
no. That's not good. All right, well, that's not good.
But you know what? We came to know him and accept him, and we had a lot of fun with Chopper.
Yeah, and I remember I don't know if I don't say he warned me, but there was this not I've described the Smithereens in the past as insular, but I don't think that's correct. I just think you guys had a sort of because you guys knew each other so well, you were kind of a little family unit, and you were sort of suspect of strangers. You know, if someone sort of came into your crew, you wanted to make sure that they were, you know, you weren't going to work with someone who was like, you know, uncool or a jerk or, you know, whatever. And I just remember, again, we'll go back to this, the Abbott and Costello thing. I don't think I was with you guys very long before that came up. And I was also grew up in the same generation watching those 15-minute Abbott and Costello surrealist comedy things in the afternoons, and I loved them too, and they really informed my sense of humor as well, I think. And I think part of the reason I got along with you guys so well is because I also shared that same sensibility. I also, and I think we had this discussion at one point where I had worked some years previously for the Fleshtones, and the Fleshtones had a cassette in their van. And when we drove to, let's say we drove to the 930 in DC, and they put on a cassette, which was just Bud Abbott's Straight Lines, excised from, it was all his, just Bud Abbott. And
those were taken from the Abbott and Costello cartoons.
Oh, from the cartoons.
Which Abbott voiced his part. Lou was already gone, so
Right.
Stan Irwin was the voice of Lou Costello. But the tape you're talking about, I actually compiled.
I love it.
And
I love it.
I gave it to Pat. I gave a copy to Pat, and I think he passed it along
To Zaremba, probably.
to the Fleshtones. Yeah, Pete Zaremba is really a big fan of Bud Abbott.
And that does not surprise me at all. That's not at all.
Yeah, and I remember that you were into that, and I think we had a lot of yucks.
Absolutely. At some point, it was almost like, why don't you slick your hair back, and we'll get you sort of we'll get you a suit. Like at one point, I almost saw myself like dressing as Bud Abbott, like drawing on a pencil mustache. I'm like, no, I don't think this is a good idea.
No, I think we did that. I think we actually did do that.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we went that far. But yeah, that was like a central thing, and I remember that really, that was one of, again, the camaraderie of the band. This was my first experience going with you guys. Was my first time, like the tour we did in 1995. Getting my decades right. The 1995 was I don't know if we toured in a bus in 94 probably, but so this tour bus experience was kind of a really fun thing because you're all traveling together. You have space. You can go to bed, but everyone would sort of gather in the front lounge. It was a TV screen, and we'd watch what I guess it was video cassettes at the time, VHS cassettes.
That's right.
Of whatever. We were watching all kinds of stuff and having a ball at night after the shows, traveling. We would just sit there and watch ridiculous movies and laugh, or music or whatever.
And I think the year you're talking about is actually 94, not 95.
94, yeah.
Yeah, all the itineraries I showed you earlier are 94.
94, right.
That was a date with tour.
Right. Yeah, amazing. Because I recall, I mean, I have vague memories of sort of the band going, loading all the gear into the Magic Shop down in Soho and being there with Don Dixon for a number of, I don't know how long it was. It could have been a few weeks, a month. I don't recall how long you were down there working on it. And then I guess, and then I assume that was toward the end of the winter of 94. And then I could be wrong.
No, we recorded the album in December of 93.
December of 93. That was a date with.
Correct,
Right.
yeah. And the tour was in 94.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay, I don't know why. I guess
I think that you came on board for a few
like
just
one-offs.
kind of pickup gig, one-offs in the fall of 93.
Yes.
I think for some reason I'm thinking Connecticut.
I think the first gig I did with you was possibly in Connecticut. So I remember it was a drive, but it wasn't really that far.
Yeah, maybe we like a weekend in New England or something like that.
Weekend in New England. There you go. That was lovely.
Yeah.
But I remember doing like fly-ins. Like I remember like a New Year's gig in like, I don't know, St. Louis or something. Like fly in, fly out, that kind of stuff. Which I really enjoyed that. That was that was a really fun job. It really was. I still love it. So where do I want to go from here? Okay, so we have 94, 95. Oh yeah, okay. So we made the record, and then 94 was a really amazing year. It was a great tour. It was a great record, and we had a lot of really interesting opening bands. You remember the opening bands that year?
Well, were the Grays one of the bands?
The Grays were one, I recall. That was a couple of guys. One of the guys from Jellyfish was in that band, and John Bryan and a couple of guys.
John Bryan and
Buddy Judge, I think it was one of the guys. I think the drummer was Buddy Judge. I think he had been Until Tuesday with Amy Mann, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. But I'm thinking of Adam.
I remember there was Jason and John.
Jason, yeah. I'm sorry.
Jason Faulkner, the great, the very talented Jason Faulkner.
Right.
Yeah, and they were a really interesting, like super like talented, four really great musicians. They had some ego problem. They kind of didn't get along very well, but their shows were always really great because they would be the kind of band they'd switch instruments. They'd switch around. They were all multi-talented guys and all singer-songwriters. I think the front line were all singer-songwriters. That was an amazing band. There was Sixpence None the Richer, I think, were on that tour.
I think you're right, yeah. For a short while, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that was fun. I liked having girls on the road because they had two really beautiful girls in their band. So it was really nice to go to work in the morning and they would, I'd spend my day looking at Kevin, and then these two girls would walk in. I'm like, the sun was shining. They were very sweet. I'm still friends with I'm gonna drop her name all of a sudden. Anyway, one of the two girls in that band, she lives in Germany now. She's still very nice. I see her occasionally when Nana goes to Germany. I see her.
Cool.
And then there was let's see, there's the Grays. There was Sixpence. There was a band called Watershed. Do you remember those guys?
Oh, was that on that tour?
Again, I might be conflating 94 and 95 together since it's not really clear to me. But Watershed were definitely one of those bands we had with us.
Okay.
At one of those points, at some point, a little power trio they were from the Midwest, Ohio. I think they were from Columbus, Ohio.
Somewhere in Ohio.
Columbus, yeah. And we had Ben Folds for a little while.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah, that was before their first record came out. And they would do this crazy thing where Ben had a full grand piano on stage. He didn't bring like an electric piano. And him and his crew they had a big cube truck, and the band was three guys, and they maybe had two or three guys as a crew, and they had this whole routine. So they would pull up the van, they'd hump the grand piano, which they'd taken the legs off the piano. They'd hump the piano wrapped in like blankets to the stage, get it up on the stage, and then they would take the three grand piano legs and they'd take a big mallet and they would knock the legs into the bottom of the piano, flip it over, and then Ben would tune it because it's a piano, it's going to go out of tune. So he would by hand tune the piano for an hour, and then they play the show, which was always great because they were an amazing, powerful live band, very, very animated. And he was a great performer, Ben. And then at the end of the show, at turnover, 20 minutes before you guys went on, they would do the same thing backwards. They'd flip that piano over, they'd knock the legs out with a mallet, and they'd hump it back out to the truck. It was an amazing guerrilla operation to watch. It was fairly impressive.
That's incredible. Wouldn't it be great if we had iPhones back then, so you have a little movie of that?
Oh man, I wish. I'd be bemoaning the fact all the time. I feel like the 80s and the 90s are like a dead spot for me because it wasn't. I mean, unless you had like some kind of nice, camera, it wasn't, now they're ubiquitous. But at the time, having a camera was kind of a fancy thing to have, the digital camera didn't really happen until like the late 90s. Everyone suddenly had one. But at that time, there's so many things I wish I had photographs of. And that would have been an amazing thing to sort of, to see that sort of, speed it up and slow it down. And then there was, I remember one night, oddly, I think it was like a one-off. They definitely didn't tour with us, but one night, I think it was Columbus, Ohio. I don't know why I think this. Weezer opened for the band. Their first single had just hit the radio. And
really? That I don't remember. How about that?
Yeah, it was really weird because it was I feel like it was a last minute thing. I don't know how it happened, but they were promoting I think their record had just gone onto the radio. I'd heard it once or twice on the radio. I'm like, oh, these are the guys with that sweater song. And they were like, they opened for us that one off night. I don't know how it happened. They were quite good, as I recall. It was an amazing.
Wait a minute now.
Yeah.
Wasn't there also a show? Maybe it was an earlier tour. I'm not sure. Wasn't there a show where Dave Matthews opened for us?
Oh, that I think I would remember that, but I do not recall. Or maybe I've blocked it
I
out.
think maybe by that point he was already off and running, but
Oh, that's
maybe it
interesting.
was earlier.
It's possible.
Earlier.
I don't remember that, but that's not to say that my memory is notoriously has big holes in it. And I think I would remember that if I'd seen assuming that drummer was with them. I think that's the kind of thing I would go, wow, that drummer kind of blew me away. But I don't recall that. But
Okay.
yeah, but these things do happen, right? Occasionally, and like, God, did that even happen? Yeah, that was
right.
So there was that. So that went on for a while, and then around that time, I remember the funny thing was there was a weird coincidence in that when you guys went into the magic shop to make A Date with the Smithereens with Don Dixon at the helm, working at the front desk of the studio was one Matthew Cause, who is now the lead singer and songwriter, guitarist in Not a Surf, and I had known Matthew. As an acquaintance since when I was in the Fuzztones, actually. He and Daniel, the bass player in Not a Surf, were huge Fuzztones fans. And backstage, they somehow got backstage. I remember maybe at the Pep Lounge meeting, Daniel, Irving Plaza. I still have a video from Irving Plaza where we closed the show with Psycho by the Sonics. And we invited everyone up on stage to kind of dance, to frug around madly. And right next to me, I'm playing the drums, and right next to me on the stage, with his hair piled up high and his collar up and his little string tie, because he looked like a member of the Clash, there's Daniel Lorca sort of skanking around. I'm like, so my history with them went back to about 1980, 83-ish. And now here 10 years later, 1993, end of 93, 10 years later, here's Matthew. And I'd seen them, I'd run into them at rehearsal studios here and there. They were just acquaintances. And here he was working the desk. And that was, again, 93. And then at the end of 94, again, a year later, he sought me out and gave me a cassette. And that was the original stuff. And I brought that on the road with me. I think I played it for everybody because I was so excited about joining this band because I thought the songs were really, really interesting and great. So there was a weird circle. Like I met through working for you guys, I reconnected with Matthew, so as things started to take off, I joined the band. I guess I started playing with them. They gave me the cassette in 94. In the beginning of 95, I began, I was on the road with you guys here and there, but I played, one or two shows with them. We played a show in February of 95 and then another one in March. When you play in New York City, a local band, you're lucky if you play like once a month, once every couple of weeks. So, we played at CBGB's or we played at Under Acme. And we had a couple of good gigs and we got some buzz going. And so by the time the middle of 1995 rolled around, I did a couple of months with you guys in 95. And then when I came back, only a couple months later, everything blew up. It was really, really fast. And by December of that year, we were in the studio making our first album with Rick Ocasek at Electric Lady, this whole thing. It kind of went from 0 to 60 really, really quickly. And then, a few months later, it was MTV land for us as well. So, that was a whole new world. So this was the transition. It was like I went from the Smithereens and watching a band, that had that kind of, touring videos, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly a year later, I'm kind of in one myself. And I think I see it as the momentum of the Smithereens coming in, like picking up your momentum and the energy that you guys had. I see this sort of in an actual way, but sort of in a psychological, esoteric kind of way. Like this energy sort of drove me into Not a Surf, and then we had this wonderful success. So, what was that?
That's really cool, though. That's cool. It's like it was just the course you were on somehow.
Yeah. I was really lucky. I've always been really lucky. I always felt like because I love to play the drums so much, I always felt like I have this feeling like that I am like, I don't know, I sound like I'm patting myself on the back really hard, but like in my heart, like I know that I'm better than the average drummer. Let's put it that way. I'm no Neil fucking Peart, but I know that my energy is good. And if I'm in your band, I'm going to make your band better by nature of my being in it. Mm-hmm. And so I think this energy, this happened to a lot of bands I was in, like nothing was happening. And then I joined and suddenly something would happen. I joined the Fuzztones, nothing was happening. And a year later we were signed and playing opening for The Damned and all this stuff. And I feel like, I feel like I'm about to take credit for it, but I really feel like, like when you, like a drummer really makes a huge difference, right? The right drummer in your band sort of just like, it just it just kind of gives everything an impetus. Like there's a forward motion. A great drummer really glues things together. Now you guys had a great relationship, so but your drumming is like that too, and it's sitting next to you every night. I would sit at your feet literally every night behind Mike's incredibly loud rig, and I would and I was watching you you have this sort of thing where I'm sure you're aware of it. You kind of chew. You're kind of like in a zone, and you kind of chew a little bit. You have a sort of a jaw chew that you do when you're sort of in there, and just watching you just hammer away at it. You had the biggest. I've never seen. You had a crash cymbal. You're a crash cymbal. Your main one, where most guys would play like an 18 or maybe a 20-inch crash right in the main position. You had like a 20 or a 22-inch Z-Mac, which was like a marching band cymbal.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
Like the loud cymbal was like a gong. It was so thick, I couldn't believe it. But you're a powerful guy. You hit with a lot of force, and
well, you know what it was. Playing drums, you like to hear your kit and your cymbals talk back to you.
Absolutely.
The band was playing so loud.
Yeah, it's a loud band.
That I needed to have that girth on that cymbal
to cut through,
to resonate, so I could hear it,
Sure.
I feel it.
Exactly.
So if the band was playing lighter, I don't think I would have required. I still have those cymbals.
Yeah, they last forever. You can't break that cymbal.
A lot of people did, a lot of drummer types did, and the folks at Zildjian did kind of were taken a bit aback by that, but. In a nice way.
Yeah, no, it's an unorthodox choice, but it worked for you. I mean, it sounded great. Like in context of what you were doing, that cymbal had a nice, powerful, like it had a slow motion kind of thing to it. It wasn't a fast cymbal. It was like had this big explosive sound to it. Yeah. I was So I was just sitting there watching, absorbing. Your playing is very particular. You are we've discussed this too. You are you're a rim shot drummer.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, you tend to play. I've over the years, I think, and I was that way too. When I was in the fuzz tones, I was a full out rim shot drummer all the time, and I really identified with your playing because that's the way I played too. And somewhere in the middle of my tenure with Not a Surf, a couple years in, I decided to sort of that style was not going to cut it for certain things. So I've sort of taught myself to play the center of the drum. It didn't take me too long, but I had to sort of I'm so used to that feeling of when you play a snare drum like that and you get that shot of the vibration up your arm, and you really feel it and you hear it. And then playing the center of them when you first start doing it sounds like nothing's happening. Like, I can't, can anyone hear that? You realize microphones are doing a great job for you. But, so I had to relearn to do that. But, but your style and mine were really very aligned, I think, at the time. So watching you was really, in a way, I felt like I was watching myself, to be honest with you. Because in the way, maybe in the way that Jimmy saw television and saw himself, like I could do that. Watching you, I had the same thing. Like I'm Dennis and I are like the same guy, basically, in effect. So I had that same kind of feeling.
That's really nice.
Yeah,
that's cool. Right.
So there's that story. What else? What else do I want to talk about? Now because my little thing here is called A Hard Day's Late Night with Ira. Obviously, there's a kind of a Beatles thread that I'm hoping to run through it. So I want to talk to you just for a few minutes in closing about Ringo. We've discussed Ringo before, and I want to go back to what we've talked about. And this was the idea that you were already interested in music and listening to music actively before the Beatles showed up.
That's right.
So you already had a handle on like drumming. Do you remember what was the first pre-Beatles? What kind of stuff were you listening to that really caught your ear?
Well, as I mentioned before, American Bandstand around 61, 62, I was really enjoying the Twist and Four Seasons records, Leslie Gore, the Beach Boys, the Phil Spector records, and early Motown. And
by the way, I want to plug this for you because you put out a record a couple of years ago called Late Music, which is full of these influences. And it's a fantastic record, and people should go listen to it because it's really beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was really drawn to the rhythm of those records, and this is before Ringo hit the scene, and I always, when people say who were your earliest influences, I got to point to who was ever playing on the Four Seasons records, which turned out to be Buddy Saltzman, New York session drummer, and he played on many other great records during the 60s and 70s. Buddy Saltzman, Hal Blaine was on the Phil Spector records.
Saltzman is his name?
Yeah, Saltzman.
I'll have to do the research on that. That's a new
Yeah, actually, I wrote an article on him for Modern Drummer some years ago.
I will seek it. I'll talk to Adam Budowski, see if I can sort it out.
Yeah, I came to know him, and it was a great thrill because looking back, I think that he was the drumming on the Four Seasons records was really big stuff for me.
Yeah.
And he played on a lot of hits, a lot of hits in New York.
Did he continue to play with them?
And he and Gary Chester were the two main guys in New York.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, I was already steeped in whatever was on the radio, whatever was on top. And bear in mind, back then, the top 40, the palette was so wide because you would have Burt Kampert records and Dionne Warwick records, Del Shannon records, and records like Wild Weekend by the Rockin' Rebels, and just all over the place. And Peppino the Italian Mouse, whatever it is. So you're an astute.
Right. Yeah, no, it was a wild mashup of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm talking just pre-Beatles at this point, you know,
right.
And a lot of regional sounds too. That back then that there were records coming out of Texas, like even like a record like Dale and Grace. I'm leaving it up to you, you know, a record like that, or anyway. So I loved all those New York so-called Brill Building records, and I think all that stuff informed not just my drumming, but my musicality. I just really imbibed that stuff.
Right.
And so it was just my passion for it that fueled my desire to play, and so I did, you know, and so I was teaching myself to play, I guess, starting around, I don't know, the early 60s, maybe 1960, 61. Yeah. And then so everybody says when the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan, that was their moment. And watching Ringo, a lot of drummers saying seeing Ringo was the catalyst for them. And I guess it really kicked into high gear for me, too. But I remember just hearing Be My Baby in 1963, Hal Blaine's playing on that, or the beat on Surfin' USA. You know, that stuff really got to me. So I was ready for when Ringo came along to dig into what he was doing. And Ringo, man, as you know, there's just no other player like Ringo.
Yeah. And he was he was visible in a way that these other drummers like Hal Blaine and all these session guys, we never saw them. I mean, you could hear what they sounded like. But Ringo, we could see him in the flesh. You could see him like the way he played, this big smile on his face, this sort of just this sort of loose-wristed head going side to side. Like to watch him play was also really transformative.
You're absolutely right. Even though there were musical groups that appeared on TV prior to that, they were the first real focus of four guys up there playing their instruments, and you saw them repeatedly. And you were able to really watch what they were doing. And I think a lot of musicians that are intuitive and maybe haven't studied, like, I don't know if you did, I never took lessons, but not only I think do we learn from what we hear, but what we see too. Right. The body language goes a long way as to...
that's everything. To me, I kind of learn more from watching drummers than maybe listening to them. I'm that way too. When I watch drummers, I really look at how they sit. They sit high, they sit low. What is their physical relationship to the instrument? It's very informative to me.
Yeah, and so it's true. Seeing the Beatles, I think, really shifted a lot of wannabe or would-be musicians at that time in 1964 to taking up arms and becoming a musician.
Sure,
I think aren't there some statistics that actually validate that say that Ludwig drums just overnight couldn't keep up with the demand?
Oh yeah, no. I'm sure that's the story. The legend has it that from the next day, the orders started rolling in for, Black Oyster Pearl kits. And they had to keep up demand, and they went to like 24-hour day shifts for the next couple of years trying to meet the demand. And I think that's the reason Ludwig has a reputation for drums made in that period can be a little bit dicey. Some of them, they all sound good, but some of them are, there's some quality control issues, because they were producing them so quickly, they couldn't even, like the serial numbers, for example, is like if you were trying to sort of date a Ludwig drum, it can be rather confusing because they would use up whatever they had. I mean, Ringo's snare drum is a great example. Like he wanted a wood drum, and they gave him this particular drum, which was kind of, not the usual drum you would have got if you'd bought that kit that Ringo had. You would have, if you'd ordered in a catalog, for example, I think you would have gotten probably a metal snare drum, like a Superphonic with it.
Oh, really?
Or if you ordered, the first kit he had was that little what was the smaller one, the 12-inch, 12, 14, 20 was the first couple of kits he had, because that was his first size, was the smaller drums. And if you'd order which they called I can't remember now, I should know what it's called, but the 12-inch rack tom, the 14-inch floor tom, and the 20-inch bass drum, his first two kits were that. And if you ordered that, you would have gotten like a piccolo snare drum with that. Or
really?
Or a Superphonic. You would not have gotten this sort of 5.5-inch or 5-inch, 5.5-inch jazz festival snare drum. How that happened is still a kind of a mystery. He had been playing a wood snare drum on his previous kit, the Premier kit, but no one is quite sure. He said, just give me a wood snare drum. When he ordered it, I guess from that store in London. But they gave him this particular Jazz Fest, which was, there was a Barrett Deems model. They had these 5.5-inch shells, which they used for a couple of different drums. The Jazz Fest was like a 5-inch drum, but Ringo's is a 5.5. The Barrett Deems was 5.5. There's all these stories about like what was the provenance of this particular drum that he got. But it was kind of an accident of fate that he got this this one particular snare drum, which he continued to use throughout the entire Beatles' career with one snare drum, a remarkable instrument. I'm happy to have one that's almost exactly like it in my collection, which is like prized, like it's the greatest thing that I own.
By the way, did I ever send you those pictures of me and Barrett Deems?
No, you have pictures of you with Barrett Deems?
We happened to be at Zildjian on the same day. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. He was a Broadway drummer. What was Barrett Deems? What was his gig?
I think he was from Chicago. I associate him with Louis Armstrong.
Ah, I see.
As a matter of fact, I think he appears in that movie. What's that color movie with Louis Armstrong? Is it High Society or something like that?
I don't know. The Ball of Fire? No, that's a different one. That's a different jazz.
If you look up Barrett Deems on IMDb, it'll turn up and with Louis Armstrong. It's a beautiful color performance and I think he does a solo, and it's great.
Wow, I gotta check that out.
But speaking of piccolo snares, wasn't Ringo's a Premier snare a piccolo?
It was very shallow. It probably was not more than 3 or 4 inches deep. So it was shallow.
It looked like it from the photos I've seen.
And so I think he probably wanted to, I don't know, I'm guessing he wanted to stay with that a wood shell snare. Like I said, if you'd ordered a Ludwig kit at that time, you probably would have gotten a Superphonic. But they gave him that drum, and obviously he got along really well with it. And so he continued to use that as they kept buying him kits, but that's the snare drum that he used. Anyway, so my point of that was, I don't remember, but
we were talking about Ringo and his sound and his influence. I mean, I think Ringo was. I mean, he's been kind of. Ringo has been described as like the Gene Krupa of his generation, where he gave focus to the drums and the drummer, as Gene Krupa did in the 30s and 40s. So he was the first. You had Sandy Nelson records prior to that, but those, I don't want to say they're novelty records, but they were novel in the way that they weren't a band record. They were drum-centric records, but Ringo was guy in the band. You knew he was driving the bus, and like you said, the visuals, you could tell he was having a ball.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And he swung like mad, and maybe we didn't know what that was when we were kids, but I think that also spoke to us and made us want to play. I said, wow, can I have that feel.
Yeah.
Can I have that feel? And that's why the Beatles records felt so good, and I think that's a key ingredient into the success of the Beatles records, of course, was Ringo's feel.
Yes, absolutely.
He channeled the joy of life and put it into his grooves.
Yes.
And you know what the thing is that I don't understand. And we could chew on this for hours and days. Why he was slighted because he played simple. Well, that's what song players do. I mean, take any hit record, except for maybe the exception being like a Wall of Sound record, where the drummer was instructed to really be extroverted. In his feel, I mean, Ringo's feel was extroverted too. It burst with energy and joy. But take any pop record of the day, and there was no overplaying on those records. Ringo was so in the pocket and delivered what the song needed, and created the foundation for his fellow musicians and for the vocalists. But with such style, and he did have technique. That's the thing that I don't understand, because if you listen to those things he does on "I Want to Hold Your Hand" at the end of the chorus, those little inventions that he does, I have a hard time playing those myself the way he did.
Well, because he's a lefty, obviously playing on the right hand.
That's not even being
his phrasing is very strange.
Where you're doing the same thing with both hands, That's tough stuff to do with that fill coming out of the bridge on "Tell Me Why."
Tell Me Why. That's a very fast double-handed triplet. That is incredibly hard to do. I've tried that on a number of occasions. At that speed, that is not easy. You've got to have a really light touch to do it.
Yeah, and the bits he does in "Not a Second Time." Again, they're great inventions and they're tricky, but for me, the ultimate Ringo performance will always be "Long Tall Sally."
Long Tall Sally.
Yeah, if you listen to his performance, which I believe was done by the band live in one take, his playing on there is so superlative. It's a textbook example of a drummer. I think at the top of his game. He doesn't repeat any fills. Everything is accented so stylishly.
Yes,
I like to. That's the word I like to use with him. He had a stylish approach to playing.
Yes, it was.
But
it has grace and elegance about it.
I'm sorry?
It was like an elegance. There was a grace to his playing. I
Yeah, but on "Long Tall Sally," he's swinging, he's rocking, and every stop, every point in that song is addressed so perfectly and beautifully.
And then he does those and the triplets in the outro where he's sort of like hitting cymbals and then sort of switching between the toms and the snare drum. That's very complicated to do. I mean, I've tried it on a number of occasions. I sound like that, but I've never exactly the way Ringo does it. I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I've even seen footage of it, and it's still very, very difficult to decipher. I can't do it either. I could fake it, but I think I know what he's doing, but it's still hard to do.
Yeah. I was amazed by. I think one of the things that stands out for me. There's one. It's a later record. It must be on. I think it's on Rubber. Give me a second. I have it. I think it's the Word on Rubber Soul.
That's great.
And all those fills, and there are all these weird fills that start on an odd beat, and there's one extra little quaver in all of them. They're really hard to describe, and they're almost impossible to replicate as they are, because he does some weird. It's so fun to get the sunshine. Like any drummer would go da 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mm-hmm. But his have there's one extra little beat in there. I don't know what it is, but every time I listen to it, you can hear that it's slightly lopsided. It's completely unique to him. No other drummer sounds like that, and it works perfectly in context. But it's unorthodox. It's really unorthodox.
Yeah. Well, also on that same album, the fills he does on "Think for Yourself" are really cuckoo. They're great.
Yeah. No, I'm always amazed by part of the reason I think that the Ringo gets any kind of flack, and I think this is true across the board. The drummers have always gotten flack because they're drummers. There's something there's this sort of running joke about, drummers are, Neanderthals, or there's hitting things, and therefore, drummers are not really musicians. This sort of like, drummer jokes. I don't want to get all, I don't want, this is like, it's deep in the culture. It goes back way. I actually just read a book recently, which you might really love, called, I'll send you a link to it. It's just the history of drum set drumming, going back to the late 19th century, where drummers like drums came out of a military tradition. It was like a bass drum and a snare drum, and if you wanted to play both of them, you had to have the bass drum on one side of you, and you put the snare drum on a chair in front of you on a tilt, and you had one stick, and you'd go, I guess you'd play a foxtrot or whatever, like back and forth. You'd have a cymbal on top of the bass drum, and you'd have a snare drum on one side of you and the bass drum on the other, and that was it. They hadn't invented bass drum pedals yet. That didn't happen until, around 1900. People started to make their own. There's a lot of early patents, and then around 1909, I think, William F. Ludwig patented the first commercial bass drum pedal, and from there and then it was just took off. So that allowed drummers to sort of, free up their hands completely, and play the bass drum with their foot, which up to that point had not been possible. And then it was like a free-for-all. Then drums became associated with jazz, but drummers became central. If you had a movie theater and you were showing silent movies, you hired two people. You hired a piano player and you hired a drummer. And the drummer would...
Oh, really?
And the drummer's job was not merely to sort of complement the piano player, but the drummer's job, because the drummer played a trap kit contraption, and the drummer's job was not merely to keep rhythm, but he had to do all the sound effects. So drummers were notorious for having like racks of bells and whistles and all kinds of noisemakers, and they put on a big show. So drummers immediately got a reputation as being these showmen. They were the center of the show because no one had ever seen anything like it. And drummers started spinning their sticks and doing all this showbiz stuff. They had a lot to do, but even so, at that time, drummers were looked down upon. Drums were not even considered any sort of serious musicological. If you'd read anything about musicology, for example, in the early 20th century, percussion instruments were not even discussed. They were below contempt. They didn't talk about them. They were not considered musical instruments. And there was a lot of, as drummers became sort of like a running joke in the 20s, jazz and drums, like you were a jazz band if you had a drummer. That was how you knew it was a jazz band. They had a drummer sitting there playing a drum set. And so at first, it was just noise. Everyone, it's this horrible racket, obviously. So drummers were always the low man on the totem pole, even though the drummers were invariably the first guy there. They'd have to set up the most. They'd set up music in it for everybody else. They'd be the last guy out. They were the linchpin of the whole organization. But drummers were always like, drummers, it's not even a real thing. So drummers have always sociologically been at this sort of like, they're not even, that guy that hangs around with musicians, a drummer, we don't even count. So I think I think Ringo sort of like as a drummer got some of that.
Yeah, it could be, but I still think in the pantheon of drummers, he got short shrift, even if he just...
It still happens. It absolutely still happens. A day doesn't go by where someone like, I'll do it all the time where someone has to like, he wasn't very good, was he, and all this. It's just, you feel like you have to keep like defending him for some reason, even though he doesn't need defending.
There's some other things that come into it too. I think a lot of established jazz drummers looked down on him, and that spread like wildfire.
Because he played open. He didn't play. He played open-handed. That was kind of unusual. I always wonder where Ringo.
Not so much that. I think just because, even session drummers, they were losing work to the self-contained bands too.
Right.
And I'll tell you, here's something really cool. I became friends with this guy named Joey Cass. Mm-hmm. He was a drummer from the old school. He was a jazz drummer, and played all kinds of music. He was actually the road drummer for the Four Seasons in the '60s, and then he ended up playing on some of their records. He and I became friends. He was cousins with my friend Dave Amos. He's since passed away. But anyway, I brought him to one of our New York drum lunches that we were having. for quite a few years before the pandemic, and
That sounds like fun.
a bunch of tri-state area players getting together and having lunch and having some yuck. So I brought Joey, and I drove him, and I said, "Hey, Joey, I want to play you some stuff. I want you to listen. Tell me what you think." So I gave him the Ringo blindfold test. He was not hip to the Beatles' music. He had put Ringo down in our discussions prior to that, okay?
Right.
He was very dismissive and said, "Ah, man, he's crap," and this and that. So I said, "Hey, listen to this, Joey." I played. He did not even recognize "She Loves You." And he says, "Wow, man, that's a great feel. What is that? That swings. What? Holy crap, that's great. You know, this and that." I said, "Okay, let me play another one." Then I played him "I'll Get You," because that's another one of my favorite Ringo's tracks. It's just a hypnotic, otherworldly straight beat. And he said, "That's an incredible groove. Wow." And I played him 2 or 3 others. I think I played him "Long Tall Sally." And
I like the opening of "Devil in Her Heart." Black gong gong. I just love that feel.
I'll tell you a story about "Devil in Her Heart" after I finish this.
Okay.
And I played one other song, and he said, "Man, I think when I played, I forgot one of the songs I played. He said, 'Wow, who is that? Delbert McClinton?'"
With the
I
harmonica.
said, "No, these last 4 songs I played were Ringo, the Beatles." He said, "Get out of here." So that was good.
How could you have missed those songs? How did they get
I know,
past
right?
him?
Yeah,
Where was he hiding?
But I just think I don't get it. I don't understand why Ringo.
I think people got used to drumming. Later became like an extreme sport. Like you had a big drum set, and you had to play real fast and and flashy and big. It was like flashy. Rock and roll was flashy and
Well, that happened in the later '60s for
that
sure.
didn't happen later. Yeah, it must have started early on. I don't know. Yeah, he always got. I don't know why that would be.
Yeah.
It was probably just. I mean, the Beatles. But the Beatles all got that. Like, oh, they're just a fad. It's just they're not very good. For everyone who thought they were great, there was some other guy at a newspaper who thought they were just they're this and that. So it was always so.
Yeah, I think there was a modicum of jealousy from some of the established players that thought that their world was being challenged too, and thought that rock and roll versus standards was crap and all that. But back to "Devil in Her Heart."
Oh yeah, "Devil in Her Heart."
So 1995. Let me backtrack for a second. 1987, we recorded the Green Thoughts album in Los Angeles at the Capitol Tower. We rented a drum kit from a guy called Jeff Jonas, who I think at the time he had like a small warehouse where he was a tech and housed kits for people like Keltner and I forget who else. He had a bunch of clients and he rented gear. So we rented
the drum. Not the drum doctor. Is that what you're talking about?
No, that was Ross Garfield. So anyway, you were there when we worked with him, weren't you?
We did. Yeah, you did a session for I think Time Won't Let Me.
Right.
I think Ross was on that session. Yeah.
That's right. So anyway, so we rent the kit from Jeff and we stay in touch and. Flash forward to 1995. He becomes Ringo's tech, and Ringo wouldn't go on the road without using Jeff Jonas. And my friend Dave Amos calls me. You know Dave, right?
I know that name, and I feel like if I saw Dave Amos, I would know exactly who it is.
So anyway, Dave calls me. At the time, Dave had a company called Voce. He made B3 modules. For organ players that used synths, and Felix Cavalieri at the time was on Ringo's band and needed to get one of these Voce. The company was called Voce modules. Nice. So Dave says, "Hey, I got to go drop this off for the Ringo show. You want to come along and we'll hang out and then we'll stay for the show?" I said, "Yeah, great." So we go there, and lo and behold, Jeff Jonas is there. We hadn't seen each other in a few years. Actually, I might have seen him earlier that year because I did have to rent a kit when I went to L.A. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. So we hadn't seen each other for a while. And it's sound check, but no, they don't do any sound check. No, the band is not there. But he shows me around. He says, "Hey, you want to see the drums?" I said, "Yeah, great." So he takes me up to Ringo's kit the stage is empty except for like some union worker that's kicked us off because the stage was supposed to be dark, I think. So anyway, so Jeff says, yeah, go ahead, check out the kit. So he lets me go up and sit behind Ringo's drums, which were new at the time. It wasn't like
a vintage
there was
kit.
no old mojo to them.
Yeah. But it was a new Ludwig kit?
Yeah, it was like 1995. I think it was a Blue Sparkle kit. So, but I'm up there and I'm looking. It's a new kit, but the cymbals are not new.
Yeah.
And they look ancient, in fact. And I asked Jeff, I said, what's the deal with these cymbals? Oh, yeah, Ringo's had those since 1961. He's used those on a lot of Beatle records.
Holy shit.
And he says, go ahead, you want to play the kit?
Oh, my God.
And I say, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to wear out my welcome. What would I really like to play on Ringo's drums and cymbals? And I played about 30 seconds of Devil in Her Heart.
There you go.
That was my choice.
That was a very good choice. I might have picked something similar. That opening, that beautiful, back just and then
during the song, the groove just floats.
Oh, it is floaty. It's absolutely perfect. It just cruises right along. That's one of those classic Ringo twist beat, genius. I love it.
Yeah. I love it.
And you were saying you. I remember we talked about this once a long time ago, and you made a comment that his hi-hat cymbals were very, very thin. Do you recall this?
Yes, they were. They were thin. All the cymbals were pretty thin, and I have a picture of that, as a matter of fact. Yeah. The cymbals were pretty tarnished and old, and pretty thin.
I scored an old pair of Zildjian, like 60s era Zildjian hats some years ago, and I really liked them. They, to me, were very Ringo-y. I've used them with my band, the Bambino, and so forth. And they're just very thin 60s A Zildjians. And at one point, I was playing them. I'm like, they seem like the top one and the bottom one. I grew up in the 70s, and in the 70s, everyone played new beat hi-hats. They had come to popularity in the late 60s. And in the new beat hi-hats, the top cymbal is thin and the bottom one is heavy, which gives you a louder chick and a louder volume generally. And all my hi-hat cymbals had been like this, but these particular little skinny 60s ones were not like that. I'm like, maybe I want to... and at one point, I went and I weighed them. I didn't have a scale in the house, so I went to my local supermarket. There's a Publix up the street here, and I said, "Could you weigh these for me?" He goes, "Yeah, sure. What are these? These old Zildjians?" I'm like, "Yeah, yes, they are." So I put them down, and they were both, and I have it written down somewhere. They were both exactly the same weight, the top and bottom cymbal. And I think, and I have a feeling that this is very common with old cymbals, and possibly might be true with Ringo's, is that the top and the bottom cymbal were exactly the same weight. Certainly these are, and when I've tried to put a heavier cymbal, let me find a Zildjian from the same period with a heavier weight on the bottom. I'll get more chick. It'll be like new beats. It doesn't work. They don't do that. The two cymbals at exactly the same weight, they were like, I don't know, it was like 900 grams, something really not very heavy, 800 grams. I can't remember. I wrote down the number somewhere. Or 1,100 grams maybe. And they're both the same top and bottom. And I think that might be part of the thing of that fizz, that sizzle in his cymbals as two completely matched, very thin cymbals. I bet those were like that.
I think it's on the wrist, really.
Well, he had a beautiful loose, that sort of, that side swipe that he would do, that sort of windshield wiper move that he would do back and forth. I don't know where he got that, but man, that does make a difference in the way something feels when you play like that. I'm sure you've done it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And that whole sloshy hi-hat thing, I was always trying to figure out where he might have got that from. And Earl Palmer played like that in the 50s, you know?
Right.
Little Richard records, and a lot of jump blues drummers would play that way. So I'm thinking he probably got it from Earl Palmer.
Yeah. And again, like...
Or he just stumbled on it himself. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure, oh, well, maybe he had seen. I mean, I know the Beatles had gone to see guys like Little Richard when they played in England. Would Earl Palmer have been playing with Little Richard at the time?
No, he would not.
Yeah. See, I'm wondering, like,
Earl was already entrenched in the L.A. studio scene.
Yeah. So I don't know how he would have heard that in a recording.
It is very audible if you listen to Long Tall Sally or
Or Palmer's thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that's where he heard it. Or he might have just stumbled on it. Hey, this feels good, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's a couple of things are a mystery to me. Even his playing, even that he plays his match grip playing. Ringo was the first drummer. Again, like on television, we'd seen there's been bands with drummers, obviously. Buddy Holly, all these different rock people had been on television before the Ed Sullivan Show. But all those guys, Elvis's drummer, all these guys were all traditional grip players. They all come from a sort of.
I don't know that DJ Fontana was. He might not have been, actually.
To my understanding, I believe that Ringo was the first guy to show up on television playing match grip. That's what I've heard. I could be wrong.
I'll have to check. I'm going to have to research that because maybe you're right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that was pretty. I mean, that seems pretty unorthodox to me. It's pretty unorthodox, and I wonder how he arrived at that. I wonder if he had started at some point because he's pretty self-taught as well. So maybe he never, saw. I mean, he must have. I was obviously watching other drummers, so I wonder how he. I'd like to ask him. That's one of those Ringo questions. I'd like to see how he landed on match grip, or if there was a period maybe early on where he played traditional grip and then it wasn't for him, or it was too complicated. And I don't know. That's an interesting little Ringo detail. I'm not sure of.
Yeah, that's a good point. If there were other drummers, be it on TV or not, that favored match grip.
Yeah, I could be wrong about that. Again, I'm going to send you a link to this fantastic book about the history of drumming, drummers. It's like a sociological history of drumming in the 20th century, and
wow,
it's really I could not put it down. It's not a very long book, but it is. As a drummer, I couldn't believe that no one had sort of compiled all this information into one place. It was, the history of like how to, bass drum pedals, and then drummers, what were, the trap kit and what drummers' responsibilities were and how they were viewed, and, the popular, the drummer jokes go way back. That started way early on. It's deeply entrenched in drummers' cultures, like drummers are lesser than or something. So he takes apart all this stuff. But you're going to enjoy this book very much. Have you read a book called, there's a book about Charlie Watts written just recently. Did you read that? It's called...
No, I haven't, but I heard an interview with the author. It sounded really good.
Sympathy for the Drummer, it's called. It is a...
I'm sorry, what's that?
Sympathy for the Drummer is the title.
You're right.
It's an fantastic examination of Charlie's oeuvre. It's really very, very good. And again, like another underrated drummer because he's so deceptively simple and yet, elegant, and... like the whole Stones catalog just sits right squarely on his funky shoulders. I mean, he's just an unmovable rock. Okay, so all I would like you to do right now is let's just talk about the radio show. I want you to plug that. So you have a radio show on FMU?
Yes, it's actually on WFMU's Rock and Soul stream, and which is one of the several streams that they offer on the station. Right. And I've been doing it since last August, and actually I've taken a break from it recently, but I'll be playing reruns of previous shows, and I'll be hopefully ducking in and out with some new shows during the summer. I just needed to take a little break.
And it's called. It's called
Denny's Den.
And it's mostly it's very. I mean, I've listened to a number of episodes, and it's a kind of very eclectic mix. And how do you decide what you're going to play? Do you have a theme that you go with?
Well, sometimes the seasons dictate certain sets. Like last couple of weeks, I did some summery type sounds, and something just to jumpstart a show. I'll look at whose birthdays might be occurring that week.
Right. So you have some little something to talk about between.
Some little tributes, and it gives me a starting point. Or, but I've been listening to records since 1960, 61. So,
how can you estimate how large your record collection is?
I think I have about 20,000 LPs.
Are they still all in your basement?
Yeah.
I remember, I have a vague memory of coming to your house. I guess it must have been 1994. I stopped by the house to pick you up or drop you off, and you brought me down into that basement. By the way, say hello to Donna. She's fantastic. Yeah, seeing this like floor to ceiling, and there was like a wall of like cassettes and a wall of 45s. I'd never seen anything quite like it. And now it must have it must have expanded exponentially since then.
Yeah, it's time to pare down a little bit, I'd say.
Yeah, you have a finite amount of room.
But the thing is, it's so much fun to, after having years of, as I said before, imbibing all this music, it's fun to share it with the world. And that's the thing. You can listen from anywhere in the world at any time you want, because even though it's a weekly show, it's archived. Yeah. So if you go to WFMU.org and go to the Rock and Soul stream, you can find it there. There's so much other incredible programming on WFMU.
Right. Well, that's one of America's premier radio stations for years. I mean, they have few peers.
Yeah, it's true. They're completely freeform, and the programming is just there's something for everybody. You might tune in on a certain hour and you say, "Wow, what the heck is this? This ain't my thing." Yeah. But then, the next shift after that might be right up your alley. Right. That's the beauty of it. There's so much. Like I said, it's completely freeform, and they've opened up all these streams. There's the Rock and Soul stream. There's one called Give the Drummer Some.
Oh, yeah.
There's Sheena's Jungle Room. There's just so much programming, and you could never go wrong. The thing is, poke around, find what you like, and then go for it.
Dive in. And the Smithereens, and this, I know we sadly lost our man Pat a few years ago, but the Smithereens soldier on. You guys are still playing shows.
That's right. Of course, we were all waylaid by the pandemic, but we have some. We just booked flights yesterday for some things that are coming up. We're performing with Marcia Crenshaw fronting the band on some shows, and on other shows, Robin Wilson from Gin Blossoms.
Oh, wow. Perfect for you guys.
It is perfect. It's working out great. Our fans really love it.
Yeah.
People are still very hungry for the Smithereens music, which
you guys have a rabid fan base, and that's the other thing I remember when I first started working with you guys was, you start to see the same people night after night, to see Uber, these kind of fans, and over the years, Not a Surf has been lucky to develop the same kind of thing where you have, you go to a city and there are those, it's like a family reunion. Like you see these people, you see them once every a year or two, like, hey, and they're just like, that kind of relationship that you have with your fan base, with an audience, that's a really, really magical thing.
It is. And what's cool is that at this stage in our lives and in our career, when we started hitting the road big time in 86, 87, and through the 90s, a lot of folks were seeing us play at their colleges.
Right.
And as time went by, they had families and their kids grew up, and their kids are attending college now, so those parents are now free to go to shows again, and they're coming out in droves to relive the happy times from when we first toured, and it's
nostalgia. That kind of nostalgia is very strong, and music is the best way to get that kind of nostalgia, to sort of that particular thing that music does to you, that you identify it with a certain part of your youth, or that's very, very powerful stuff.
It's true. And Mike's on bass, Jimmy's on guitar, I'm on drums, and so you still have the essential feel of the band. And I always say, for me, the sound of the Smithereens sometimes can be whittled down to just when Jimmy and I hit a downbeat, even if we're at soundcheck and it's just the two of us and we hit guitar and drums. It's kind of the way Jimmy voices a chord and the way I hit the snare or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the sound of the Smithereens right there.
Right.
And of course, Mike is essential to the sound as well. But we were able to carry it along, and it's.
Yeah, no,
it's really cool.
it's the any band is really down to just it's the chemistry. When people talk about chemistry, but it's really this sort of something that certain combinations of human beings have, that only those two people can have. You can replace one member, and it's fine. But there's a certain core thing, a communication, that sort of chemistry that certain musicians have. It's kind of totally irreplaceable.
Well, that's right, and that's I think why a lot of us like certain bands and like certain music is because it's not just because the music's great, but there is a certain personality to the group, the grouping of the musicians, and what they bring from playing together. I mean, the Beatles are a perfect example of that.
They're probably the primary example.
Or the Kinks. It's the collection of the personalities and what they bring together.
To me, that's also the thing about fans. Like, fans of your band are people who are not just, I like this song. I like the people in this band. Like, they're interesting to me. The fact that I like this music was opened the door. And now that I've listened to this music and I've gone to see the shows and maybe I've met them, now I see that they're, the personalities of the individuals. That's what makes the music. It's like your love of music. All these. It's the personalities that then when you see behind the wall, behind the curtain. It's not just this production and drums and guitars. It's the people that are playing them. That's what it really is.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, I meant to mention earlier that there was a Nada Surf tune played on FMU today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, I love when that happens.
There's a show on every Thursday afternoon, Sue Braun's Thing with a Hook. And, matter of fact, Doug Gillard did the theme song for her show.
Who did?
Doug Gillard.
Oh, right on. Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, that's right up. Of course.
And I think you would really like her show. It's I was one of the shows I was referring to before, where you just hear incredidible music, and she tends to play a lot of power pop type music, and it's kick ass.
Right.
So anyway, I forget the song that she played, but it was on her show today.
Yeah, no, I sometimes dismiss my own catalog. I don't really think about it very much, but occasionally I go back into the Nada Surf catalog, which is not getting deeper and deeper. We're 8 or 9 records in, I think, and there's a lot of, Matthew is a very good, I won't talk about myself, but Matthew's a great songwriter. And so, and we're the hook is like, it's a hook delivery system. That's what music is to us. Like, it's like a drug. You're delivering nicotine for the cigarette. You're delivering a hook. What's that thing that gets in your head? You can't get it out. I got to hear that record again. Put it on again. It ends. You want to start it again from the beginning. That's the mark of a great song.
No, it's true. Yeah. It's really true.
Yeah.
Hey, is Bambi Kino coming around again?
Oh man, I hope so. Well, we've been, Doug's been very busy. He's been back with GBV a lot over the past couple of years. We're kind of far afield. Mark's in New York, Doug's in New York, Eric is in Los Angeles. I'm here down in sunny Florida. But we've tried. The last time we tried to get together was just the minute the pandemic hit. That would have been March of 2020. We were about to go do another thing in Hamburg for some, it was like the 60th anniversary of the Beatles' first show that year in Hamburg. Their first show was 1960. So this would, we had formed the band in order to play the 50th anniversary at the Indra. That was where our first shows were, at the Indra, and we played 8 hours and we played 8 hours for 3 nights running. We wanted to do it like them. So
did you?
Yeah, well, that was the whole idea. Like, well, let's do it and do it like they did it. So we learned whatever 80 or 90 songs, and we started at 8 o'clock, and we, played for an hour and took a half-hour break, played for an hour. And that's the way we do our Bambi Kino shows when we played in New York. That's the only way we do it. We're not doing a 40-minute set opening for your band. We play an hour, and we take a half-hour break, and everyone gets a drink. And then we play another hour, and everyone takes a little break. And then we play like an hour and a half. Usually it's a 3-set show. But in Hamburg, we were playing, 3-4 sets a night. We blew ourselves out. But yeah, we did it 3-4 nights running because we wanted that experience. Like, what was it like to see a band play all night from like 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever? And we wanted to, as musicians, we wanted to know what that experience was like too. And it was really, really, it was tiring, but man, it was so thrilling to play in that room on that stage. It wasn't exactly the same stage they played on, but it was the same club. And so that was our first shows, and that was in 2010, which was the 50th anniversary of their first. That was August 1960 was their first shows in Hamburg. This was August 2010. And then in 2020, we were supposed to go back, and there was another like festival, 60th anniversary of the Beatles' first shows. And again, that was their first shows as quote unquote the Beatles. They had other names before that. This was the Beatles. And so we were all psyched to go back and do it again. We were all really, really excited. And of course, it collapsed like a house of cards when the pandemic hit. So at some point, we're going to have to sort of make up for lost time. Yeah, all of us love to do that. And it's a very thrilling, it's a deeply satisfying experience to play what we call like the Rosetta Stone of Beatles music, like all the stuff that added up to the Beatles. So yeah, we love it deeply. All of us, I've said on many occasions, I'd leave Not a Surf in a Minute to like do that every night. Like I'll play 5 hours a night. I'll play this music. I don't care. It's so satisfying. Harmony singing. Everyone gets the lead vocal on something. It's really a good time, and it's a sense of camaraderie. And you got that sort of Beatles sense of like, it's supposed to be a loose ship, and the pressure's off. If you make a mistake, no one cares. Like you can fuck something up. I mean, that's part of the thrill of it. Like, we screwed up the ending. Hey, fuck you. So So I'm hoping we can try to figure out a way to play some more shows here, there, somewhere, L.A., New York, because I've rarely had a better time playing with a band. And we love, and the times that you've come and joined us were that were really awesome. Having you come and sit in, it was so great. I was doing Peppermint Twist, right? You played drums and I sang Peppermint Twist.
Right.
That was evidently that's what Pete Best did. Pete Best would go sing Peppermint Twist, and I guess Paul maybe would go back and play drums. I don't know. Maybe he played. Maybe do it from Behind the Kid. I don't know. Matter. Well, I'm off to.
You say you're going away?
I'm going Saturday. We've been trying to figure out what to do, Not a Surf, that is. And so Saturday, I'm off to, our bass player lives in sunny Spain. So I will be jetting off to Spain on Saturday. I'll arrive on Sunday. And we're going to spend just 2 weeks. We were going to do some we'll do some shows and we'll stream them and we'll broadcast them and we'll do all this special stuff. And we were planning this whole elaborate thing. We were going to rent a place and record some shows, and it just turned out to be logistically kind of a nightmare. It would have been a lot of work. We would have had to have, for example, we were going to like play our entire first album all the way through, but that would have involved like us remembering those 10 or 12 songs, which is a lot of work. And Not a Surf is a band who does not generally like to rehearse. So it would have been kind of it would have been so much homework for everybody. So we ended up saying like, you know what, we'll just get together for 10 days. We have a little studio there. The bass player, Daniel, built a little studio kind of in his basement. Well, it's not little, it's actually pretty good size. And we're just gonna play. We're just gonna try to write some new material for about a week and a half and enjoy the sun and write some new songs. So when things get back to normal next year, we'll be ready to put out some new material and get back onto our career, such as it is.
Very good.
Yeah, so that's exciting. I'm not excited to fly on an airplane across to Spain, but I'll deal with it. Hopefully, it won't be too much of a hassle.
What do you mean?
I mean, flying to me generally is kind of a pain in the ass, even in the best of circumstances. Airplanes and airports and waiting around and lines and taking off your shoes and security and
the whole thing sucks.
Cramped in a seat for 5 hours and it's just you just got to deal with it. But now who knows? It's going to be they're going to check my temperature. I got more forms to fill out.
Donna flew recently for work and it was pretty
Not
much
too bad.
normal, except you had to wear a freaking mask.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna have to sit on an airplane for 6 hours with a freaking mask on. Hey, listen, whatever. I'm a team player. Like I'm happy to make everybody else happy. If I have to, I'm happy to take care to wear a mask, even though I'm fully vaccinated. I will happily wear a mask if it makes other people comfortable because I'm that way. It's going to be a really great time. I'm excited that all I have to do is sort of go there and be creative for 2 weeks, and so the pressure's off. So yeah, that's going on, and we're going to have some touring at the end of the year. We're planning to do there's some European stuff that'll probably happen. There's an American thing in November. We're going to be up in Brooklyn. Actually, we're playing in Music Hall in Williamsburg. And I think there's a gig in Jersey the night before. Well, I'll tell you right now. Hold on. Don't go anywhere. We are playing in November in Jersey City. Jersey City. I don't know that I don't have the venue written down in this particular thing. But
White Eagle Hall?
That's probably it. White Eagle Hall on the 19th and on the 19th of November. If you're around, you want to come by, I'd love to be my guest.
Thanks, man. It'd be great to see you. When it gets closer, let's talk about it.
I'll remind you.
We have some dates in November too, actually. But
I will try to. I'll make a note to try to hip you to that gig.
Okay, I say, listen, if anything didn't take today or you want to revisit anything, I'm happy to talk again.
I think we got it. Yeah, but thank you. I will, if I need to, I will take you up on that.
All right, and enjoy looking at those itineraries.
I'm gonna type them all into my calendars right now.
Okay.
All right, Dennis Diken, I love you, man. Thank you so much for doing this, and I'll talk to you soon.
Love you too, and have a great trip.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
I'd like to send my deepest thanks to the inimitable Dennis Diken for giving me his time, talking with me about the Smithereens. Really, the few short years I spent working for him and the band was really pivotal to me. It resonates in my life through to this day. I can never really thank him or them enough. I hope you enjoyed this episode of A Hard Day's Late Night with Ira. There's plenty more to come. Please stay tuned. Good night, everybody.
It's a hard day's late night.